So I just invite you to center yourself for a time of meditation. So we open our consciousness, we open our minds, we open our very being to that presence of God. We feel that amazing energy and that amazing life of spirit flowing through us in this moment. There's nothing to figure out. There's nothing to do. We simply let ourselves be in this moment as we are. Each one of us is love. Each one of us is peace. Each one of us is a boundless joy. A joy beyond all our imaginings. And so in this space, we just allow that fearlessly to come forth with gentleness and with strength. We stand in the radiant knowingness of our divine nature. In this space, we are safe, and we feel that divine nature flowing through our arms, flowing through our legs, flowing through our veins, flowing through our very being. We are each one of us embraced in a love, in a peace that is truly unconditional. And so in this space, we allow ourselves to be loved and to be love. This and feeling this, we just gently allow ourselves to move into the silence of our being. So we just open our hearts once more to each and every person in this room. We feel that simple gratitude for this life, for this chance to be here, alive and breathing. We know that within each one of us there is this love, there is this peace, there is this simple knowing of God's presence. And so we just allow ourselves to breathe. We allow ourselves to be. And we are so grateful. We are so grateful. Thank you, God. And so it is. Amen. You know, it's said that one of the Buddha's most famous sermons and best sermons was when he actually didn't say anything at all. He walked up to the top of a mountain and he He plucked a wildflower and he held it up in the air. Didn't say anything. I strongly considered doing this for my chapel service. Shortest sermon ever. Didn't think Reverend Kelly Isla would pass me, but there's something that's so beautiful, something that's so rich, something that's so deep about this scene. And I think we all can learn from it, and we can all apply it to our own lives, and that's simplicity. Simplicity. So I'm going to speak to you today about simplicity. It's one of my core values, and I think it is so, so needed in our culture today. How many of you, in some way, feel a little bit overwhelmed right now? You got a lot going on. Maybe you feel like you can't get it all done. Yeah, me too. We feel this way in school. And, I remember one day when I was in my undergrad studies, not now, of course, but I was complaining about how much I had to do, and my grandpa just stopped and looked at me and said, "Well, Jeff, you ever think that maybe you're just doing a little too much?" And he had kind of a blunt way of putting things, but I think about that oftentimes for myself now, and I think that it really applies to our culture as a whole. I sometimes wonder, are we doing just a little bit too much? Does anybody know what the leading cause of death is in the world today? Any ideas? Stress? That's a great guess. We will get to stress. It's heart disease. And one of the strong contributing factors in heart disease is stress. Absolutely. And so because we have these complex lifestyles, we have a tremendous amount of stress. And this taxes our bodies, of course. It taxes our relationships with each other. And it affects our connection with the divine, with spirit. And so I think that oftentimes, because we have these complex lifestyles, we oftentimes, we lose that inner connection. And many of us, sadly, may have never experienced, what it's like to have a calm mind, what it's like to experience that peace that's right within us. And so sometimes I think in our culture today, we forget who we really are. I remember the senior year after my senior year in high school, I went to visit one of my good friends, Louis Anajar, at his home in Alexandria, Virginia. And Alexandria, you may know, it's a suburb of Washington, D.C., so there's millions of people in Alexandria and in Washington, D.C. And so what struck me about this town was its simplicity, its quaintness, its community-like atmosphere. And so one evening after dinner, we all decided as a family we were just going to go on a walk. I thought, this is cool. What sort of family, just the whole family goes out on a walk. And our goal, our objective was to get Slurpees from the 7-Eleven. It was great. And so we were walking along, and we were making connections, and we stopped and we spoke with Mrs. Peoples, Lewis's neighbor. "How are you doing, Lewis?" We connected with Mrs. Peoples, and we connected with the guy that ran the Chinese restaurant down the street. And we got to the 7-Eleven. They even knew the owners of the 7-Eleven. And so they were making connections right and left with people in the community, and they were connecting with each other. And there was just such a sense of being present to life. And all we were doing was taking a walk to get Slurpees. I think this is a good advertisement for a Slurpee. I have to go get one after this. But, I never forgot that memory because it was so simple. And I felt so present in that moment. And I felt reconnected with that peace right within myself. Just taking a walk to get a Slurpee. There's a quote from an 80s movie I like called Ferris Bueller's Day Off, where Ferris says, "Life moves pretty fast. If you don't stop and take a look around once in a while, you could miss it." And I wonder, are we missing it? Are we truly present to life? Or are we so caught up on our complex schedules that we're no longer experiencing that peace, that joy, that love, which is who each and every one of us truly is? So I think that as a culture, we started to reach a place, kind of a critical mass, I would say, where our lives are either now or starting to become unsustainable in some way, And the Gospel of Webster defines the word sustainable as being a method of harvesting or using a resource so that the resource is not depleted or permanently damaged. Now, resources usually, sustainable refers to resources usually, to the environment. But aren't each one of us a precious resource that needs to be conserved, that needs to be nurtured? And certainly not depleted or permanently damaged. Certainly not. So ambition is good, following our dreams, following our passions is wonderful. Simplicity doesn't mean lack of passion. Look at Jesus, look at Gandhi. They lived incredibly simple lives, but they were filled with so much passion. So the trick is learning how to follow our dreams, how to follow our passion in a way that's sustainable, in a way that doesn't deplete us, in a way that doesn't damage us. And this is where simplicity comes in to help us. Because simplicity connects us with that peace that's right within. It calms down our minds. It connects us once again. So, how do we do it? How do we simplify our lives? Well, the great thing is we don't have to, grow our hair down to our you-know-what and take off to the mountains. We can stay right here where we are, and we can learn how to simplify in the complexity of this culture and the complexity of our own lives. One of the very first things that I like to do is a very powerful practice to simplify my life is to simply say no. Learning to say no. And if this is hard for you, like it is for me, I invite you to buy one of these no buttons. And if you forget what the word no sounds like, you just
For the last time, no.
you just press this button.
No.
I love these things. $7.99 on Amazon. You just push the no button. Somebody said to me this term, they were quoting a religious science minister. And this minister had some wonderful things to say about unity. They were very complimentary in many ways. But they said that where they feel that we have lost our way is that we're trying to be everything to everybody. And in the process are becoming nothing to nobody. Ooh. I didn't quite think it was that extreme. I don't think that we're becoming nothing to nobody, but I think that there's real value in looking at the constructive criticism of others. And what I think this is pointing to, I think that there's an underlying message here, and that's the need to simplify. The need to focus in on what's truly important to us, either as individuals or as a movement, and to do that well. And sometimes that takes saying no. Because when we say yes to everything, how does that make us feel? We may feel good at first, but in time we start to feel overwhelmed, we start to feel stressed. Our lives start to become unsustainable and very complex. I was speaking about this talk with Reverend Kelly Isola, the chapel service coordinator, before, a few weeks back, and she had said that when we oftentimes say yes, we're saying no to something else. And what we're oftentimes saying no to is that we matter. We're saying no to the fact that I'm as important as you are. And this hit us like a ton of bricks, like just tears started to well up in our eyes. And it's like when we say, yes, I'll do that extra class, or yes, I'll give that extra talk, or yes, I'll plan for that extra activity, what we're oftentimes saying is, I'm not as important as those people that I'm serving. Which draws into the question, are we really serving them at all when we're doing that? So saying no is not selfish, it's sustainable. It's part of our self-care. It's what allows us to nurture this precious resource that is us so that we can live and serve another day. And most importantly, it allows us to reflect and to choose those things that are truly important to us. And so I just invite you to notice, what is it you're saying yes to? If what you're saying yes to brings you joy, if it brings you life, if it brings you energy, then by all means do that. But if what you're saying yes to makes you feel depleted or damaged,
N-O.
buy the no button, press the no button. So the second thing that we can do to simplify our lives is to adopt the attitude of a child. Adopt the attitude of a child. And Jesus was referring to this in Matthew 18, verse 3, when he said, "Truly I tell you, unless you change and become like children, you will never enter the kingdom of heaven." Truly I tell you, unless you change and become like children, you will never enter the kingdom of heaven. That's a pretty steep one. But if you just observe a child, there's so much love, there's so much freedom, so much spontaneity, so much simplicity right there in that child. And we were all born with this. And where do we lose it? Isn't that something that we really need to ponder on? We really need to think about. I remember as a kid when I would get home from school, in elementary school, the first thing I'd do is I'd raise the garage door and I'd throw my book bag under the garage door and I'd grab my bicycle and I'd take off into the neighborhood. And there was just so much simplicity and so much freedom in that. And I think that each one of us longs to express that in our lives in some way today. You might say, well, that's easy for you to say, Jeffrey. I've got 4 kids, or I work 60 hours a week. But we begin to adopt that attitude of a child, and we take it one step at a time, one step at a time. I'll give you an example. I have a good friend that has 5 boys. And I was over at his house one time, and we were engaged in conversation, and we were deep in conversation. And I was trying to put a CD away in one of those big booklets with lots of CDs in them. And my hand just wasn't, hitting the mark there. So the CD wasn't going in. And I was continuing to engage in conversation with my friend. Pretty soon I feel this soft little hand just come up on my hand and just gently guide the CD in. And I look up and I see these 2 beautiful eyes and this smiling face. And it was my friend's youngest son. It's like he was saying, oh, you silly, complicated adult. Here, let me help you with that. Let me just put that, let's just take one thing at a time and focus and just do it with great love. And that was such a wonderful teaching for me, and I think for all of us, that when we, get so complex, when we're trying to multitask or quadruple task or whatever task you want to call it, just to slow down and just focus on one thing at a time and do it with great love. There he is. So adopting the attitude of a child. Another thing that we can do is to simply start with our physical surroundings and to just simplify our physical surroundings. And as basic as this sounds, it can have a really profound impact on our consciousness. Take one room in your house, for instance. Just take your bedroom, your kitchen, your living room, and just ask yourself, what is truly valuable in here for me, and then clear away the clutter. And then when you get, frazzled in your complex lifestyle, just go and stand in that room and just feel the simplicity of that room and the stability. And as simple as that is, that can really bring us back to center. And we can start to feel that inner peace once again. You don't have to change anything in your complex schedule. Just change your bedroom. Very simple. Another thing I like to do to simplify my life is what I call grounding the intellect. Grounding the intellect. Because all of us are so exposed. We're exposed to so much information today. It's like, it's crazy. We have so much information from the internet, from books, from magazines, from Facebook, whatever it is. Grounding the intellect is being selective with the information that we take into our consciousness. So when we read something or when we get on Facebook, we ask ourselves, is this truly valuable to me? Does this serve me? And how can I use this information to serve other people? This kind of sounds like a unity principle that I know of. I don't know if anybody have a clue? 5th principle, it's not enough to just know these truths and these facts. We need to apply them in our lives. Because if we think about it, we've got, most of the information in the world right at our fingertips. So there's a deep metaphysical truth that's being communicated here, that we're really not here to gather facts and information. We're here to put those facts and information into action in our lives. We're here to express that. And so being selective calms our minds down. It grounds the intellect into what we're actually going to do. I'm 35 years old, and if I live to be 80 or 90 and I keep that as a sense of perspective, I think about how much of my life have I spent absorbing massive amounts of information, and how much of that information am I actually using, or how much of it have I used already. And so grounding the intellect. Jimi Hendrix passed when he was 27, Jesus when he was 33, and Mozart when he was 35. So I better get cracking using some of this information that I have absorbed. Grounding the intellect, and when we do that, it simplifies us so much. And we start to feel so much peace within us just because we're saying, does this serve me? Does this serve others? The final suggestion I have for you, which is probably the simplest of all, is simply to spend time with God. Spend time with God in whatever form that takes for you. If that's meditation, if that's prayer, if that's walking in nature, if that's exercising, whatever it is, spend time with God. You know, we spend so much time doing. We're a very doing culture. We're doing, busy, busy, busy. But the very source that allows us to do everything that we're doing in our life is oftentimes the source that we most neglect. You know, how foolish of us. It's what's enabling us to do all of this stuff. I remember just a few years ago, just like when I was a little kid and I'd throw my book bag under the garage door, the first thing I do when I get home from work is I'd set my dishes down in the sink or wherever, in the fridge, take off my coat, and I'd go straight back to my meditation cushion. I was so excited to be with God. I was so excited to feel that exhilaration, to feel that sense of peace. And I'd go deep in meditation into inner space. And you know, of all the things that we can experience in our lives, of all the things we can experience, all the places we can go, the most pleasurable experience that we can have is that experience of communion with God in meditation and prayer. And why is that? Because God is the energy which underlies and gives rise to the entire physical creation, to all of life. And so when we meditate, we are plugging directly in to that source of energy and power. So I just invite you, if you have a really complex schedule, really complex life, take 5 minutes, take 10 minutes at the end of that day to offer up that energy to the divine and to experience that. Because that's what brings us into that space of simplicity within us. That's what brings us into that stillness within us. So these ideas, these simple ideas of saying no, becoming more childlike, simplifying the physical surroundings in our environment in some way, grounding the intellect, daily meditation. These simple tools can help us so much if we let them, so much. They can reconnect us with that peace within. They can make our lives feel sustainable once again. And we begin to start to experience that peace, that real peace that we are. I think most importantly, we become present to life once again. That life which is within us and which is all around us, everywhere. God bless you.